Welcome to the Ag Inspo Podcast, where we delve into the dynamic world of agriculture, uncovering the stories that inspire, empower, and drive change. Join hosts Rena Striegel and Ron Rabo as they explore the journeys of farmers, entrepreneurs, and leaders who are making a difference as they navigate the critical work of transitioning their operation to the next generation. From navigating family dynamics to developing the next generation of ag leaders, we'll bring you the insights and inspiration you need to thrive in today's ever-evolving agricultural landscape. So whether you're a seasoned industry veteran or just starting out, get ready to be inspired, informed, and empowered as we learn from best practices and a few colossal failures on the Ag Inspo Podcast.
All right, everyone. Welcome to the Ag Inspo Podcast. And I am most especially excited today that we have some very, very special guests, some very dear friends of mine, Ed and Rebecca Dalton from Wakeman, Ohio, with Dalton Farms. And they just have an incredible story. Not to mention that they have an amazing family and are doing great things in the ag industry. And so, Edward and Rebecca, welcome to the Ag Inspo Podcast.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah. So, hey, I wanted to just kind of start off this conversation today. Just if you can kind of talk to the audience about what your story is, what your background is. I know, Edward, you have, a long family history in production agriculture, and that kind of starts it all. So if you could kind of walk through that for us and talk about what that journey was like and kind of what happened in the process of some of that transition. And kind of what you guys have done as a result of some of those circumstances that you found yourselves in.
Yeah. So that could be a really long story, like most agricultural stories in that we have today. But we are the seventh generation on our farm here in Wakeman. I grew up here. I was born right down the road. I have a similar story to a lot of other farm families, I guess. Grew up with a dad, an uncle, and a grandfather that farmed together. Probably the first big story in our part was a family farm split where my uncle left, and then it was my dad and my grandpa, and then we bought my grandfather out. We row crop farmed. We raised cattle for meat production, feeder to finish. And then we also I guess I lost my place there. Sorry. So we
raised cattle.
Raised cattle. I'm not good at this. Sorry, Ron. So after my grandfather, I bought my grandfather out when I got out of high school. And then my dad and I farmed together. Our story continued a little bit. I came back from college, just dad and I farmed together. At a early age, unfortunately, my dad had a heart attack when we were working together one day, and he passed away. We were in our late 20s. We kind of continued to farm on from there, and it kept growing and building, and we kept in grain farming, cattle farming, and then my wife joined the farm a little bit later than that, and kind of took our cattle business to the next level. We went from basically commercially raising our cattle, selling more pot style load direct to markets. And she decided that she wanted to join us on the farm, and the best way we could do that was direct to consumer. She started our Facebook page and grew that a ton. And then we now are still raising cattle and row crop farming, but all of our cattle are direct to consumer.
So let's walk that back even a little bit more. So you had some challenges through this transition process when you bought your grandfather out. So do you mind kind of sharing that story? Because I'm sure that you're not the only person who has faced that similar circumstance that you faced with family, that you had worked there for, basically your whole life, and that the plan was for your grandpa to sell to you. So kind of explain that to everyone about what happened there and the set of circumstances that surrounded that.
So the whole story when I decided I wanted to buy the farm, I made a casual remark to my grandfather that I didn't think would do much, but basically, I said he generally paid me $5 to mow the lawn to go the whole story, and he didn't have $5 on him, and I said, well, just keep it as a down payment, my first down payment on the farm.
And you were what,
I was
17 at that
17
time?
at the time. And so he came back to me and my father the next day and he said, are you serious about wanting to buy the farm? Buy me out of the farm. And I said, absolutely. So we had the farm appraised and he said, we can do that. We had the farm appraised. He asked for the appraised value and then he wanted a down payment, which wasn't huge, but a down payment on top of that. And we did a land contract. And so he was essentially our banker. So we did a relatively normal note on the property. It was a 20-year mortgage with a 5% interest on appraised value plus what we agreed that I would put down. The biggest challenge we had is it was never structured quite correctly. Even though it was a land contract, we had a legal document between us. When I wanted to expand the farm other, we found because of how we had it still listed at I guess it would be the auditor's website, and whose name it legally was still in. I couldn't say it was an asset of mine. So that was kind of probably our biggest challenge. We had to negotiate with that. And then when I asked Grandpa to change it, that's where the family dynamic always gets interesting. And he didn't want to change it how we had to change it. So even though I'd paid on the property, and anybody that has a property note knows the first 10 years is basically all interest, we got to start over again. So we get to tell everybody, not only did we get to buy the home farm once, we get to do it 1.5 times.
Wow.
So that's a little fun history and how we got started.
Yeah, which is a significant hurdle for you both to jump, because like you said, it's hard enough to buy something once, let alone having to do it 1.5 times or 2 times. And then the angst that causes, the strain that causes really in that family relationship. What happened from them point? You have an uncle that's involved, or had the uncle been removed at this point?
No, he had split before any of this had happened. So that part of the family, that split had happened probably about 10 years before any of this transpired.
Okay.
Yeah, but I think one of the funny things and common misconceptions in our area is that because we're a 7th generation farmer, it was just handed down, right? Like, well, no, actually, we've been paying for it 1.5, 2 times, so it's not something that, even though it is a 7th generational, business and farm, doesn't necessarily mean that it's, given to anybody.
Well, I think it's a common thread really in production agriculture that a lot of times there's not money in the bank because the bank is the farm. And so as we pass that down to the next generation, we need some, the current owner of that needs some kind of some kind of value out of that for retirement. And then, that allows obviously for the next generation to step in and then be able to basically have some skin in the game. And so Edward, when your dad passed away, just describe that day to us, and describe, if you don't mind, and just describe kind of the impact that it had on your life and kind of where that particular incident kind of sent you emotionally.
It was a tailspin, like I think it would be, for anybody that goes through it, obviously. I guess life comes at you fast. You never know what you're going to do in that situation until you have to do it. Like I said, it was just a normal day. We were just working, and it was business as normal until it wasn't. And I think emotionally, it may have been. I'm not sure you're ever over it completely emotionally or get through it 100%, right? You expect, you have this life plan to grow up with your dad and farm with your dad, and take that, and then have him not only be there when you're in my age, but to be here for my kids. That's where I think that emotionally, I'm not sure it's ever over, because I look at what my kids are missing out, that they never got to know him, or, he would have just had a ball with them to this point. But it's just, it was a tough day and it was a tough transition. Luckily, my dad was very, very proactive. When I was young, he said that, his philosophy always was, if I do it for you, you'll never know how to do it. So when I joined after college, came back to the farm, as far as seed, what we planted, what we sprayed, a rotation, how we marketed it, he was an amazing soundboard for me. And he had no problem telling me when I was really wrong. He gave me just enough rope, is what we always say. Is he gave enough rope to choke but never die. So he would let me make the decisions. He would he wouldn't say a whole lot. He was really good at helping negotiate, basically me making all the decisions, but not letting me fail 100%. Just about 60% failure till he would help me reel it back in, I guess, if that makes sense. But so when he did pass away, luckily I had those years of experience. I wasn't like I knew how to do the marketing. I dealt with our seed salesman already. I dealt with our chemical guys. I'd already done that for years. So I was fortunate in that. The bookkeeping and counting, I really did very little with. That's probably where I struggled the most, was moving forward in the office. The operation side of it out on the farm, I can't say that it was easy without him, because it wasn't. Don't get me wrong when I say that, but I struggled more in the office than I did out on the operations, as I think a lot of young farmers would too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do think that's a weakness. It's kind of the last thing that you get to sort of insight into, because when you first come back, most of the time you're just learning how to be a great operator and learning how to grow a crop or raise livestock. And so that bookkeeping piece is typically one of the last things, although when there is a disruptor, like what you experienced, it's kind of the thing that almost needs to be the first thing. So that's tough when you lose someone just so unexpectedly like that.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I always say I went to Ohio State for college, and my degree is in agronomy. And I wish that I would have done more business stuff in school. That is definitely one thing as far as the paperwork side or the business side of it. I wish that if I could go back to them days, that's definitely one thing I would change. And I would recommend that for any young farmer that's coming out of school. Our fathers have all done a great job of teaching us agriculture in a whole. And there's a lot of help for agronomy side of it as you move forward. I wish I'd have done more business planning as a young farmer than I did.
Yeah. I think I probably hear that honestly more than anything in about any industry that I've ever worked in, because I've done consulting and coaching in a lot of different industries. Every young person, when they get about mid-career, say, gosh, I wish I would have done, studied business in school or had some kind of accounting or, just some kind of business background, because, especially when you end up being an entrepreneur, the managing the side of your business that is your finances is almost the hardest thing to do, and the thing that will make or break you more than doing the thing itself. So that is not an uncommon sentiment, I think, is for a lot of people wish that they had that background.
Yeah, you can be a great producer, but if you don't understand the numbers behind all of it, then that creates a whole nother set of challenges, especially in today's world, where the disparity between cash flow and our asset base is continuing to widen, and where that return isn't necessarily where we would like it to be. And the difference between revenues and expenses is not much anymore, just based on where the markets are. So when we met, I think it was a top producer, and I want to say it was in 2019 or so, and so somewhere around there. But you both were kind of at a place with your farm that you kind of wondered, what's the next step for us? Like, where do we need to go? Can this get better? Can we really turn this into something that we want it to turn into, where it can continue to be a generational farm, where we can continue to increase our cash flow? And so kind of walk us through that time as well.
I think one thing that you didn't really mention either is when his father passed away, we thought we had everything set up, right? And everybody always does until that thing happens, and it actually wasn't as set up as we thought. So that made us pretty hypersensitive moving forward for the next generation, even though, technically we shouldn't be passing away anytime soon. We never know. So after that day, we really started becoming, and then we had our own kids. We started really being, on top of more of the succession, even planning, even at our age now, because we realized how important and how it could affect the farm and maybe not be here for the next generation if we don't.
We thought that our property, my dad and I had started some LLCs. The goal was to have an LLC for operations, an LLC for the operations, and then for the land, right? Which is pretty common, I think, in agriculture to separate those two and go that route. We had an attorney that we thought had funded all this stuff correctly, and we learned drastically the day or shortly after Dad passed away that it was never funded correctly. And it was not, it was just, so it ended up a mess. We had land that was in my name. We had land that was in my dad's name. We had land that went to a trust we didn't even know existed. Some ended up in my mother's name. So that was a big chunk of not fun when, shortly after.
Wow.
To try to organize all that. We had property that my dad had bought when he was very young, ended up in probate, so that was not a lot of fun. We had a couple years of getting everything back together, and that was a little bit of a challenge as well. But to go back to what you were saying, Ron, as far as when we met, we were definitely floundering as a farm. I tried to do it myself with just my wife and some part-time help, and that wasn't working. So we'd had employees in and out, and everybody knows that's a challenge in itself. Trying to build a team around you that's good to have, and grain markets were in the crap. Cattle were doing okay. Cattle actually kept us afloat for some years. Rebecca at that point had been really starting to ramp up our marketing part of it, and
so working full time off the farm.
He was working as a nurse full time, so we were just like burning at both ends and trying to figure it out. And it seemed like the business itself, the farm, was just like stagnant, and emotionally we weren't there, and it was tough. We were trying to figure it out. And that's when we met Ron, and that's when a lot of things luckily changed for our operation.
We were also, emotionally struggling at that time too, because not only it was probably 7 years prior, we lost Edward's dad, but we kind of just been maintaining, I feel like, and for, the 6-7 year period. But then both my brother and Edward's sister at the same time got cancer, very sick, very ill, and ended up passing away at a very young age. One was 29, one was 41. So we were honestly just kind of wondering what we should do and why we should keep doing it.
I think we were lost.
Yeah.
It would be the easiest way to explain it. We were just really, what are we doing? Why are we doing? What is our why? You hear that all the time, and it sounds like a cliche, but it was the truth. It's like, why are we doing what we're doing on a daily basis? And why are we struggling so hard to do what we're doing on a daily basis? Because there's other things. And, you start adding up loss over life, and a lot of people have lost a lot, and you lose a dad and a sister, and her younger brother was like a brother to me. And it's like that all compacted in a few years, and then your farm's not making any money, but you're working 90 to 100 hours a week, and she's working at the hospital, but then coming home and, and we're trying to raise kids. So that's kind of what led us to our night meeting you, Ron, and kind of where our breaking point was trying to figure out just a path. And we're far from having it figured out yet. That's one thing I can guarantee. But we're trying to work through it day by day still, like everybody else is.
Yeah, when you found yourself in that position and really asking yourself those questions, like basically, why are we doing what we're doing? And shouldn't we just take our talents and our gifts and maybe go do something else even altogether? What caused that to all change? What type of action did you take at that point where you said, you know what, we are going to really grab onto this thing and we're going to change it for the better, and we're going to create something completely different and completely new for us and really move forward with that opportunity? Like what did that for you?
I think it's kind of a two-part answer to that. Our grain side went a direction, and then our cattle side kind of went a direction at the same time.
I think a couple of things.
Yeah.
Edward was like, do you want to become more involved? And I, absolutely. Sure. I would love to be part of the family business. And so we went to conferences, honestly, is like probably the first catalyst there. Mm-hmm. And then of course you, Ron, but we can talk about that.
Yeah, we can talk about Ron for 2 minutes because we greatly appreciate Ron's help. And Ron, you're really good at giving other people credit, but you need to take this. But when we met with Ron and it was a chance meeting, you told your story about how your situation was with your father at Top Producer that year. And it truly touched us when we were sitting there listening. And I said, somehow we need to meet Ron. And we ended up in a line, one person behind you at the end of the night on a chance meeting. And we end up talking for way longer than we should have. But anyway, the most profound thing you said to me that evening that I remember instantly is we were talking about trying to change our cattle operation because it was starting to make us a good amount of money on our farm. And we were talking about that. And you said, why are you trying to change the part of your farm that's making you money? Change the part of your farm that isn't making you money. And it was that simple. But I never thought about it. And that led us to, on the grain side, we explored the organic production. And it just took us down a whole different avenue with our grain side to where this day we're a commercial, or we're a parallel production. We raise organic production and we raise commercial production, corn, wheat, soybeans, spelt, clover. I think that's about it. So we do that both commercially and organically. And the organic side of it, what's that?
Soybeans.
Yep. So that trying to find a little bit more of a niche market on the grain side of it certainly helped. Looking at stuff more dollars per acre rather than bushels per acre certainly helped. And then at the same time we did that, Rebecca just kept growing the direct-to-consumer side of the business with the cattle. And we went from 20% direct-to-consumer to 50% to 75% to now we're 100% and have been for years. So it kind of was both things at once, I feel, that really changed our farm and our attitudes. And being in the organic grain world, that group of growers rejuvenated my life. I mean, just in farming, but how they shared, how they talked, how they helped each other. That was good to see, to where, on commercial ag, not all the time that happens. That it's very different. So it kind of got us excited to be in agriculture again, realistically. And then finding a home for Rebecca to come back to our farm was awesome. Because that's one of the proudest things we have to this day on our farm is not many people can have no off the farm income as a family. And I'm really proud that we've been able to do that. And that's a testament to what she built on our cattle side.
I have a lot of questions about that for you, Rebecca, because you just, I speak to a lot of producers that wish they could figure out how to do that. And so for you guys to be able to produce 100% of your cattle production can go direct to the consumer with no commercial sales in there. I would love to sort of dive into that with you a little bit about how you went from 0 to 100%. And it sounds like you've done it in a fairly short amount of time.
Yes and no. I mean, I started when we had our twins, which they're almost 12 now. So it wasn't like overnight, but it does kind of seem like that a little bit too, because time flies, right? Honestly, just listening to our consumers, listening to who we're selling to has been huge. We just started out smaller. Like Edward said, like he was selling halves and quarters of beef his whole life, but it was probably maybe 20% of the business model. And when I had come to him and said, like, what can I do to help? I don't run tractor. I don't do those types of things. You don't really need my help. But now I'm stuck doing all that too. But you got to be careful what you ask for, I guess.
Once you're in,
that was my focus, because I could still do a lot of that while I was working full time as a nurse and taking care of my kids. I could do social media has been the number one help of building that business, to be honest. And social media, free social media too. It's very little marketing that has gone into it, which has helped tremendously too, because we're not spending a lot on marketing to move forward with it. Mm-hmm. My network also at the hospital did help because I worked with a lot of people in a different area than where we live that would start talking about, oh, well, you guys raise beef. What does that look like? Could we get some? And I'm like, but they didn't want a half of beef. They didn't want a quarter of beef. So we started offering smaller packages. We were like $100 bundle. What about that? You could fit that in your freezer that you have in your kitchen. And it's a smaller price point for a lot of people that aren't maybe willing to or want to invest in that bigger bulk order. So that's where things really started expanding, I feel, into getting us just more customers and loyal customers. And it's really been fun to watch now those people that have transitioned from started maybe buying just $100 bundle to now they're splitting a whole beef with family members. So that's been really cool, and kind of teaching people that, hey, that's like the cheaper way to do it. You get to pick and customize things, and just kind of seeing that transition has been fun. The other thing that we did is then we did start offering piece by piece individual cuts of meat, which wasn't necessarily an easy process to do because that comes with legality things and health departments and things like that, which was not a very fun process at all. But we got there. It just takes time and jumping through some hoops. And so that has helped to grow the business as well, because not everybody even, we still have a lot of people that show up on a weekly basis to do their grocery shopping. But sharing on social media, honestly, is like the thing that has, I would have to say, be one of the most instrumental things. And we don't try to be a sales pitch on there, I guess. We share more of our farm and our family and the day-to-day things. And maybe every once in a while throw in a post about, oh yeah, by the way, do you want some beef? We have that. So just kind of creating that relationship with people has been the biggest thing, so that they trust us. They come to us with questions that they have, things that they see and wonder if it's true or not, because they trust us. And that's been really fun for me, because I'm still then in a service kind of role in the community, even though I'm not at the hospital anymore as a nurse. Yeah. So I don't know. What did I miss?
I think that I think a lot of us in ag on a daily basis take for granted the disconnect between what we do and the reality of the consumer. And even though we live in a relatively rural area, it's still, people have never seen a cow or touched one or have any reality of where any of their food comes from. And that goes from their bread all the way to their beef. And, so it just, when we grow up in agriculture, we think everybody knows what a combine is. We think everybody knows how to raise cattle, hogs, chickens, and they just don't. And that's not their fault. It's just a product of the world we live in today. And farmers in general are our own worst enemy, I feel, is because we don't share. And I'm as guilty of that as anybody. If it wasn't for Rebecca, nobody would ever know anything about our farm. I wouldn't share it on social media or do a podcast for that matter, and it's just, we need to get out of our own way and tell people that we're not killing the planet, no matter how we farm, what we do. There's a million bright ways to do it, and we're all trying to do a good job. And we got to tell people that, because our narrative has been spoke for years, not by us. Mm-hmm. And if somebody else tells our story, it generally isn't right. So I guess that's a big part. Educating, we try to educate as much as we sell. And I think the education really helps because people care, and people do care, and some people are intimidated to ask, which is nothing wrong with, and if we share it, sometimes they learn without even asking, which has been great for us.
Yeah.
Were you online yesterday and watched my speech that I gave or something here in Montana? Because you just reiterated it in full, pretty much.
Oh, good.
Yeah, because I mean that's completely true. Like we are our own worst enemy, that we don't communicate enough to the American consumer about who we are, what we do, what our production practices are, and why we bring value to the table. I mean, no one does a better job in producing food than the American farmer, and no food supply is safer and healthier on the face of the planet than what we have available to us as American citizens. So you guys have here's what I love. So this is an exciting part of the evolution of what you guys have done, I think. So when you're talking about selling cattle, we're not talking like 5 or 10 head. Like you have a system. You're dealing with a lot of numbers. And you have a system that you use when you feed these, completely remarkable, with the efficiency that you have developed with how that works. So just I would like everyone to hear just a little bit about that, because let me preface this by saying this, that I've been on a lot of farms in this country, and I have never been on a more neat, well kept, professionally run farm than your farm. It is truly incredible. I've never seen someone that takes care of their equipment the way that you take care of your equipment. So the way that you take care of your cattle and what you have done with the system that you use to feed them and to make sure they're well cared for and that the pens are kept neat just follows right along with that narrative that you have created from start to finish with how you take care of everything else. So walk us through that a little bit.
Well,
Thanks. Thank you.
Well, it got neater when Rebecca came home. She runs a tight ship.
That is not true. You should try living with him.
No. So as far as cattle numbers, we raise and finish right around 400 a year is what we're doing right now. So we do that in different groups. As you can imagine, we do groups of 40 to 50 at a time. We get them every about 5 to 6 weeks. We bring them in. We call it, in all joking aside, we call it the lazy part of it. We do feeder to finish. We have a family that starts for us. So we get them anywhere from 12 to 16 weeks on our farm, and they're on full feed. One thing that's a little bit different about our beef operation that a lot of people like to call us out on, I guess, if you will, but we raise 100% Holsteins. So we raise dairy beef, which is interesting in agriculture in itself, because the amount of people that have tried to educate us that we don't have beef cattle has been interesting over the years.
Well, I'm going to interject, because I have had your prime rib, and I've never had better prime rib.
Well,
I was completely blown away.
So, well, yeah. And I think and that goes back to, I think our own, I mean, you want to talk about going off into the weeds. This is a problem in agriculture, we feel, is farmers putting farmers down no matter how they do it, whether it's Holsteins or Angus, or if it's Herefords, or if to organic farming to commercial farming. Everybody, I don't know, that's a whole different topic for another day, I think. But so back to the cattle, we raise Holsteins. We get them in, and like I said, anywhere from 12 to 16 weeks. And then we move the groups through our barn. Every 6 weeks, they go to a new pen on a different feed ration, and they go down to the barn. We have them, takes us about 11 to 12 months to go from when we have them to when they're ready for your freezer. The way we feed, everything we've tried to do on our farm has been labor-based. With Dad passing away like he did, like I said, kind of piecemealing employees together and trying to figure out labor is our biggest thing. So everything we design or start, we build, we try to be able to do with one person. So as far as bedding cattle, feeding cattle, moving cattle, loading cattle, we try to be able to do that with one, maybe two people. So our barns have been designed, in that retrospect. And we just try to make it as time efficient as possible. Because I know farmers in general over the years have always said that your time is worth nothing. And I truly, probably most full-heartedly disagree with that of anything. I think there's almost nothing worth more to me than time. And I think that loss in life kind of probably drives that a little different for us personally and emotionally than it would others. But when you live through some of that stuff, it's like I want to spend time with my kids, not just mix and feed for cattle, or being able to do both and being reasonable with time. So we try to be as efficient as we can with time. We can with our 400 head of cattle. It takes one guy about 3.5 hours every 5 days to feed and bed. Other than that,
Wow.
we're just a daily check.
Amazing.
But it's been a good system. But I wish I could say I was brilliant and came up with it. But through college, I was fortunate to tour a bunch of farms, and we kind of took pieces from different places and kind of built our system around a bunch of different people that were already doing a great job, and just
That's
borrowed
awesome.
stuff from everybody.
So in comes the on-farm store. So so folks that want to see that, you can direct them to your website, and I would encourage them to check it out. It's literally one of the coolest structures that I have ever seen. And to think that that's on a family farm is even more awesome. So how did that concept come about, and what was the process of getting that whole thing going?
Well, we were operating out of one of the barns for a while. I mean, I don't know, years.
Years.
We had our freezers there. People would come get their halves and quarters, and it kind of evolved into, like we said, more piece by piece and more bundle, smaller options. And then COVID hit, and that even made things a little crazier. So, we lucked into timing somewhat as well. But we kind of started an online farmers market at that time too, because we had other friends that were small producers of like garlic and popcorn and things of that sort that didn't have a maybe necessarily the following too, or the outlet and place to source things from. So we started setting up tables and then offering their items when people would come pick up their meat. And it just grew and expanded from there. So Edward, the part of the barn I was operating out of was actually not for me, go figure. That was for his storage area. So he kicked me out. So he did say that he would build me a new place to put my store though. So that was nice. We weren't sure exactly where we were going to put it and how it would flow. So it just kind of fit where our grain setup is. And so I can't take credit for the awesome building that he provided me with after he kicked me out.
No, a lot of it just started pre-order, and it just kept growing and growing. And every weekend we were setting up tables and tearing down because I was trying to utilize the space for what we built it for originally. And I said, this is enough. I'm spending too many hours a week doing. I said, you've proven to me that this needs a home, is really what happened. Not only financially but time wise, and as like your model's working, and we need a home. So we talked about building a building for it, but where we wanted to put it, it just aesthetically, it didn't look good. And Ron, I appreciate your praise, but I am a little OCD, I think. So if it didn't look good, I didn't want it here. It didn't flow, and I just didn't like it. So I said, and where I got the idea was in our area, a lot of people, and I think cross country, are using old grain bins for gazebos, bars, smoke shacks. They're just doing all kinds of fun, cool things with old grain bins. So that's where I got the idea from. I said we should put our store in a grain bin.
I'm actually going to share that right now so that people can see it. Give the. There we go. Can you see the barn?
Yep.
Yeah.
So yep. If in the background you can see that's our commercial grain setup, where we do all of our drying and storing for the year. And it fit to put that grain bin there. And I called, and she's like, we're going to put up a used one. And I'm like, well, probably not. So I called my grain bin broker, and I said, what's the cost to just put a shell up? And so we started pricing it. And then I have a couple really good friends that are really talented, which goes back to the surround yourself with people that are great at stuff that you're not at. So I had a couple good friends that helped us frame the inside. We insulated it, put a ceiling in it. So we have cold storage above, and then the inside is just coolers and shelves.
So
favorite. Oh, go ahead, Ron.
No, go.
The favorite of people that come
more
in.
than just shelves and coolers. Right. So I think Rebecca was about to she was about to walk us into that building, like walk us into the building and give us a visual of what we're going to see.
Well, a lot of stuff. We should have made the bin bigger, is what I've decided. But my 7-year-old is ready to expand, and we're going to go 3 levels, he says, in the next green bin. So we'll see. But one of the cool things, I mean, we did butcher block on the countertop, trying to go with that meat flow. It's in a circular kind of herding cattle situation for people. They come in, they shop, they make their way around, and they check out, and they're out the door. Because a lot of times we do have a line out the door, which is amazing to me in itself. But one of the coolest things, and again, I can't take credit for this, but when we've noticed that kids notice it more than adults, and we think it's because kids are looking up, talking to their parents, is that on the ceiling, there's clear, I don't know what that's called, like skylighting, clear, and there is a layer of corn up there. So when people look up, they see actual corn. And a lot of people ask, like, is there really corn stored up there? And the answer is no, it's just for looks. But it is something that people are like, that is so cool. And we're like, well, hey, you couldn't come in a grain bin and not see grain. So that was just a nice touch to it.
Yeah, it truly is remarkable. I mean, to have something like that. And so you develop the cattle business, you're changing things around to make the grain operation more profitable. You built a store, and now you've embraced this farm to table concept even further. So talk to us about what you've done there with your on-farm dinner and how that's worked, and your events that you have during the summer months on your farm for the community.
These are my favorite things.
Edward is ready to send me back to the hospital working full time. Let me just say
that. I'm joking. I don't think he really is, but he does threaten that a lot when I come up with ideas. I tend to be the starter in the relationship, and he's the finisher, which is great. And we joke about it all the time, but it's true, because I come up with ideas, and then luckily he can put them into action. A few years ago, we started hosting farmers markets right here on the farm. So we call a market on the farm. And people love that because they just like coming to the actual farm. They like meeting the farmer. They like going out and seeing the cattle and having them lick them while they're here. And it's just a whole experience. They bring the kids, they bring the whole family. So and a lot of the people too that I would say vendors or friends, or have become friends, that we sell products in the meat barn is what we call it, because we originated in a barn, even though it's in the bin now. We kept the name. They don't necessarily have a store at their place. So then people and customers that come get to meet that family and that small producer and try their product. And that has helped with their sales in turn. So that's been a great, I know Edward loves hosting them, but it's been a great avenue to keep local products in local people's hands and expand those businesses for those people too. And then when it's not summer, they're coming back to the meat barn to purchase those products as well. So it's a win-win. We'll go with that.
It's a lot of work, but it's right. No, it's amazing the community it's built. And it's amazing people really do like to meet the people that are making what they're eating and what they're feeding their family. Once again, it goes back to that, do you trust me or not? And people don't always trust people in agriculture. And when they get to meet you in person and see you and talk to you and see your children, and you get to explain, and not only just us, but when the other vendors are here, they get to explain why they make their honey the way they make their honey, or why they make their bread the way they make their bread, and why it's important to their families, and why and why they can trust them. So it's an amazing community that's really been built.
So then a couple years, well, not even a couple years ago, year and a half ago at this point, we attended this really cool event in Wyoming. And it was partially Visit Cheyenne, I believe, had a big part of it, but it was on Rabo Farms. And they did a farm to table event at their farm. And so we went and attended, and it was amazing. And we sat there and said, we need to do this. So we would love to take credit for these types of things, but we're just copycats. Yep. So when we returned home in June that year, we frantically put together an event and hosted it in September. And that was our first one. And it was very well received and attended. And we hosted our second one again this past September. But again, working with those vendors is we try to showcase the people that we're working with in those small businesses and use their products. Everything's local. The meat comes from us. The sourdough bread comes from the sourdough bread lady. All of that we're using local items and just showcasing what can be produced in our area. And we are already people bombarding us and asking when the next event is, and they want to get their tickets, so they get their tickets and they can attend. So it's, again, a lot of work, but a lot of fun in the community. I mean, the response that we've gotten from the community is just mind-blowing, to be honest. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's crazy.
It is.
How far do you live from like any kind of major urban center, or is this really just pulling from the rural America, or do you have talk a little bit about the geography of this?
Yeah, we're definitely not as rural as Ron. I could not survive where Ron lives because we talked about this. I would run out of fuel in my vehicle most days. But most of the clientele and customers that we have are coming within 20 to 30 minutes of our farm. We are really pretty much in between,
we're in between Cleveland and Toledo up on the lake is where we are. So we're a good 40 plus miles, which really isn't that far, obviously, but from a relatively big city. But we really don't draw from the cities like what a lot of people think we would. It's more, I would call more the suburbs or our local communities, our little towns that are 15 to 20 minutes away. Yeah. Definitely is where our biggest clientele is from. I think in the cities, the people still do a lot of day-to-day shopping when it comes to groceries, and I think we're a little too far for that. But yeah, definitely about 20 minutes to 30 minutes. That's where our demographic would be from our home farm.
That's awesome.
When you open your farm up to the public, so my wife Julie and I flew out to your first dinner that you had. And so it was totally amazing. The setup was beautiful. The food was amazing. And then the next day you guys said, well, we're going to have we kind of open our farm up to the community, except I didn't know your farm was going to turn into a city on that day. So what I found completely astonishing with that was that, yes, you bring in all these local producers in that are marketing their own products, and you've included them in what you've built. To my recollection, you had folks could donate blood, and you were doing that as a fundraiser or something to honor your siblings or to help others.
We do,
about that.
The blood donation we do once a year here at the farm. You're right. The year that you came, we did it in that same day. We're no longer doing it that same day. It's too much for me because I like to donate blood, and go figure, after that weekend, I'm a little exhausted. So donating blood isn't probably the best option. Mm-hmm. But that is something else that we've done since my brother and Liz, Edward's sister, has passed away. We host a blood donation here at the farm, not necessarily as a fundraiser, but just for people. I mean, it's so important. And we've realized that with both of our siblings having cancer and needing blood transfusion, that we try to bring the community in and get donations of blood for that. There was something else I was going to say, and I just lost my train of thought.
Well, so when you open your farm up, so your store's open 2 days a week, is that correct?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, so you're open 2 days a week, and then during the summer months, is it May through September, or what's your time frame usually? And then how often do you have these community where you open your farm up to the community? How often do you do that?
So the farm markets or markets on the farm we've been doing an Easter event because I also have sheep and have baby lambs and the Easter bunny and people come take pictures, and then have maybe a couple vendors here that day, but not a huge market just because it's early in the season and there's not a lot of local produce at that time. So usually like March, April, wherever, Easter falls that year through September. We tried to do October, but turns out we're pretty busy that time of year with harvest. So that doesn't work so well. So we cut it off in September this past year. And we usually pair that with like what we call a farm open house or tour. We have some fun things for the kids to do while they're here. We have some food trucks here and just we pull out the equipment at that point so that the kids can climb up in an actual combine. People can see the weed zapper and what that is and just, set it up so that they can climb in. And we just make sure we take the keys out now.
Mm-hmm. So,
oh, sorry. Go ahead, Ron. Sorry.
Well, I was just going to say, so I think this is a super exciting part of this too. So numbers, when you open your farm up to your market on the farm, when people come in from the outside, how many people are we talking come through your farm in one day? This is mind blowing to me.
It's in the thousands. We don't have a number.
I wish we did have a number.
We should have a number, but it's a couple thousand in about a 3-hour period. It's radical, actually. I think at one point we thought we were going to need the police to direct traffic because our road was just a mess.
And it's not a main road, it's a rural road.
Right.
But yeah, we have a ton of driveway, a ton of parking, and it becomes the one day, the field next to our house was getting fit, ready to be planted. And our one employee was like, people are parking in the fields. We're going to have them move. And I'm like, okay. So I'm telling you, it's just like, it is. It's mind blowing. It's awesome. It brings me to tears. Just think about.
That's amazing. Cause just in looking at that picture of the meat barn, that meat barn, at least in this picture, it looks like it is right there with your grain facility, right where the semis drive under to unload and to load. So how has that been from you, just from just having that many people that are maybe not very educated about farm equipment, dangers of being on the farm? How has that been from you policing 1,000 visitors?
I would say, I think that most are very respectful and we, it does happen, of course, but I would say most people are very respectful.
I think so too, but it's still awesome. Challenging. It's stressful. So when you look at it from a risk factor, I think I probably stress a little bit more about that on those days than Rebecca does. So I think my nerves are probably a little higher and a little more vigilant on those things. But we also try to park things correctly. We're not hauling grain in and out. We're not mixing feed. It's obviously an operational farm, but we're not operating on those days.
Yeah.
We're really, the only time we ever kind of get a little overlap in there, which can be frustrating, is in the fall when we are harvesting and our store is just open normal business hours.
Yeah.
And people, they try to be respectful, but they don't know where to go. So that kind of can be a little challenging. When we're bringing trucks in and out, when we're harvesting corn or beans.
But people love it. They come here and they see, what are they bringing back from the field right now? They hear the dryer going. I mean, they love it. Well, there's red dog flying everywhere in the sky and probably filling their vehicles with it, and they love it. I don't, but they love it. Right. Like, it's just part of the experience.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome.
Definitely a part of agritourism. It is. And that's good. And we're happy that they get to see some reality as they're picking up meat from the farm that it was raised at.
Yeah.
So, but our favorite line ever is when people pull in for the first time is they say, "Oh, you live on a farm." Like, yeah, it's a farm.
I love it. That is such a great compliment, honestly. when you think about, kind of the world of social media right now, which is perpetuating a lot of hobby farms and, just a lot of different types of farming, to be called a farm, I think that's a huge compliment. That's awesome. That's awesome. I am really curious as we get close to wrapping up, because I think we could dive into so many aspects of your story. But, when I think about, two people who have lost a lot, who've had some disappointments and, have certainly been subject to thinking that there was plans, thinking that there were things that were going to support you and there wasn't, things just didn't work out quite the way you thought. So having come from that position to where you are today, with having thousands and thousands of people enjoying what you've built, having your food at their table and they know it is your food. It's not just, maybe it's ours, maybe it's not. What would be like the top 3 things that you would offer as encouragement to people in agriculture right now? Because we are at one of those periods of time where I think it's very easy to get depressed and wonder why we do what we do and wonder if this is the right industry to be in. What would be the top 3 things that you guys would offer as encouragement if people are feeling a little uncertain or feeling like it's time to make some change?
Wow. I guess so. I don't know. First thing, right off the top of my head, though, I don't know if this is encouragement or advice or what the definition of it would be, but one thing that's helped me tremendously over the last year or two, and Ron, you're part of this, is I found a group of farmers, and it's mainly 2. Ron's one of them, and our good friend Chris from Mountain Oregon's another one. And we're in a group chat text. And it's not every day, and it's not even every week, or sometimes it's 100 messages in a day. We found this like weird, I don't know if you'd call it a group or it's just support
group, yeah.
And it's from people in agriculture that do the same but do things differently. So like and I think it's important I think it's great that it's from farmers that do things differently than me, because I see that other people struggle even though they're not just a traditional grain farmer, or a cattle farmer. It's like you kind of get this like support from these guys. So I think that my encouragement would be, or advice would be, find a team or a group that just can help give you support, because we're only as good as the people around us. And I know that, once again, probably sounds cliche, but it's true. There's been days that I literally have told Ron that, like, I need you to walk me off the edge here because this is what's happening. And between him and Chris and, this conversation we have, I can kind of reel myself back in and, and then refocus and get back to work. Because that's a lot of times what we need to do is just get back to work. And we get in our own head and we forget that, sometimes the easy answer is just right in front of us, just go do it. That's like a gut quick thing that I have.
Mine would be keep sharing, because I think in ag, we need to keep sharing our stories. And like Edward said, earlier, telling our own narrative instead of others telling it for us. And that's probably easier for me to say because I am the sharer in the relationship.
I am not.
I know. But I think we do in ag just need to share. We need to keep telling our stories so that people can learn from us and have that relationship with the farmer and trust the farmer. And that would be my biggest thing. I mean, that's what's built my side of the business.
Being open, and I think just be open to new ideas and change. What do they say? Some of the most dangerous words in the world are, it's because we've always done it this way.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, if you'd have told me 10 years ago I would have organic production, that we have a grocery store on our farm. We used assets on the farm to buy rental property in North Carolina on the ocean. Like these other avenues that have just helped bring revenue into the farm, that it's just because it's always been done that way doesn't mean it's always got to be.
So that's a good number 3. Be open-minded.
Yep.
For, looking at how can you be profitable, because you can't be sustainable, like we talked about before, if you're not profitable.
Those are great ones. I especially appreciate the comment about finding people that you can talk to on the worst day. You don't necessarily always need the friends that you run into at a conference and then you're just like, oh, everything's great, everything's good, we're great, had the best year ever. You kind of need those people that'll go into the trenches with you and can hear your worst day and not judge and not be condescending and not bring you down, but actually to lift you up at those times. And I think good buddies and people that you can trust are super important for any human, but especially when you're trying to make it at a tough time. That's really important. I love that advice.
We have to keep in mind that iron sharpens iron, and that if we can surround ourselves, Edward, I just think that that's phenomenal advice too, that if we can surround ourselves with people that can encourage us and uplift us and support us in good times and in bad, and we'll just lend a helping hand or just a listening ear, that most oftentimes that's what we need the most.
Yeah.
And so thank both of you. Julie and I love you both very much. And we just appreciate your friendship and are completely inspired by your story, your work ethic, everything that you've done. You've got some 3 completely amazing, very active young boys who are just exceptional young boys who will be exceptional men and follow in both of your footsteps. And so thanks for joining us here today. And I think Rena has something completely special in store for us. Is that right?
Oh yeah, we got trivia. We have got trivia. And I think that this is so interesting that you guys raise Holsteins, because I was in Vegas at the Milk Business Conference, and the farmers in that room represented over 1 million Holsteins. And so, of course, my questions today have to do with Holsteins. So it's kind of just this wonderful little roundabout little world that we've been in the last couple of days. So
I'm in Great Falls, Montana right now, and I'm pretty sure there are no Holsteins up here.
Probably not.
There might be. You never know.
I don't know, maybe.
All right, so it's all about the Holstein today. So I have got 2 Holstein questions for you.
Oh,
all right, let's start with one that's kind of hard, and I'll give you some hints on this one. But what percentage of the dairy cows in the U.S. are Holsteins?
Oh, are you talking about for beef or in general?
Just Holsteins as a breed. What percentage of dairy cows in the U.S. are Holsteins?
So just dairy cows.
Just dairy cows.
It's about 80%.
I think it's best that Edward answer this first, and then I will follow up with my answer.
Well,
And we're looking for a
Very close to
percentage.
his.
I don't have dairy cows. We have dairy beef. So that's I could give you the number on how many Holstein beef cattle are in the United States, but
Well,
20%
hold on to
of our
that. I got a
nation's-
question coming your way that might be more up your alley. But if you
Okay,
had
that
to
was the answer.
guess, what
So I'm guessing-
percentage?
I'm guessing percentage wise, I would say it's around 85%.
Okay. Ron, what do you
I'm going
think?
to say it's actually 95%.
Well, how about if we split the difference and say it's 90?
That's what I said.
Oh man. See, she's always right.
So there we go. Good job, Rebecca. So score 1 for Rebecca, 0 for Ron. Okay.
And I can see one too.
I did say
Yeah.
90, Ron. In all fairness, I really did.
Okay.
I'm going to accept my fate here.
Just as a fun fact, that 90% equates to over 9 million Holsteins. Okay. Now this is a production question, but on average, how many pounds of milk does a Holstein produce in a single lactation?
Oh, the whole lactation?
A whole
I was gonna
lactation.
say a day.
It's lactation.
How many pounds?
How many pounds of milk does the average Holstein produce?
So how many days? Like say like
I don't know.
100 maybe?
Well, that's only 6. That's
I have no
Ron gets to go first this time.
Which,
Let me give you some ranges. Is it
Please.
under 10,000 pounds? Is it between 10,000 and 20,000 pounds? Or is it between 20,000 and 30,000 pounds?
You
Of
can't
milk in a
Google the
single
answer.
lactation.
I'm going to say it's 24,500 pounds.
24,500?
I think it's the 10 to 20,000.
I don't have a clue.
I don't know.
It's actually 23,000 pounds of milk.
He Googled it.
Yeah, you did.
I swear, sometimes I think he does. One day, Mason
Is
was
Julie
in his
there
office.
Googling?
One day, Mason was in his office laying on the floor. And so now, whenever he gets one that's like really too close to be like just a guess, I'm like, is Mason laying on the floor, handing you the answers up on his phone? But isn't that remarkable? 23,000 pounds. And that's just the average cow. That's the
That's a lot.
average. That is a lot
That's
of
a
milk
lot.
those girls
That
are
is a lot.
able to produce.
Wow.
That is fun.
That is awesome. Well, Rena, once again, thanks for enlightening us. And
My pleasure.
hey, I'm actually enlightened because these are things that I never knew. I didn't know that apparently we have 10 million cows, milking cows in this country, and that's amazing.
Yeah,
That's
it really is.
Wyoming. I mean, we actually have a pretty good sized dairy in Colorado, not far from us, but I don't have any background with that at all. So that's pretty remarkable. I think it's just a reminder, honestly, how accomplished and how resilient American farmers and ranchers are. And like if we have the freedom to think and to do, and if you will just let us be free and make our own choices and find our own path, that we can make just about anything happen. And it doesn't matter where the markets are or what's going on with the economy or what the political climate is. Like, we are resilient people. And I think that should serve as a great reminder for all of us who do have those bad days to say, you know what, we are doing great things and we need to continue to do that.
Agree.
Agreed.
Thank you two so
Thank
much
you,
for
guys.
telling your story and for sharing all the amazing things that are happening on your farm and in your life. And we'll just look forward. We will probably have to do a little catch up with you in a year or so and see where you're at, because it sounds like you are on the move now.
Well, thank you guys. We appreciate it and appreciate the support and everything that you guys have helped us with too. So
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you guys.
Awesome.
Always.
All right. Well, until next time, we will see you all on the next episode of Ag Inspo. We've got some great guests that are coming your way this season. And so we'll see you in 2 weeks for our next episode. Thank you so much.
You've been listening to the Ag Inspo Podcast with Ron Rabo and Rena Striegel. Find Ag Inspo on Farm Journal's YouTube channel and anywhere you find your favorite podcasts. For more information about today's guest or the resources referenced today, please see the show notes listed below. Join us next time when we will meet another inspirational leader who has taken those small steps to bring about really big change.